Hey everybody, it's Natalie from Power Moon Tarot. I wanted to take a little bit of time as we are moving deeper into the Mars Pluto story happening right now as we speak. I wanted to take some time to speak to what is going on. And as we know, we are in the middle of a pretty nasty Mars Pluto opposition, and it's going to continue from now until we're going to have just hit after hit of Mars Pluto opposition from now until April or May of next year. And I decided to call this video Mars Pluto opposition and the rise of incel pride as a result of the recent election in the United States. We have seen on social media the rise of incels and violent aggressors who have made their opinions known, particularly towards women, out in the open about how they feel, and the election results have emboldened these incels to express themselves with more fervor and to become incredibly aggressive in the way that they are communicating with women online. And as we are seeing this Mars ingress into Leo, and we're going to be seeing Pluto moving into Aquarius on November 19th, um, it had me thinking a lot about this opposition. So, for those of you that don't know what an incel is, that's INCEL. Incel is short for involuntarily celibate. So, it basically represents white heterosexual males who can't find a sexual partner. And because they can't find a partner, they blame women for their failure to find a romantic relationship or find a sexual romantic relationship. And these, misogynists or women hating incels, they've been around for a while. This isn't their first rodeo, so to speak. But what I think is interesting is I think that the Mars Pluto opposition that is currently happening and is going to be happening into next year is really like pushing this energy in our faces even more than ever before. And that's why I am calling Mars in Leo opposite Pluto and Aquarius the rise of incel pride. And as we know, Mars Pluto has often been associated with aggression and extreme predators' sexual aggression. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later into the video. But for those of you that have been on social media, whether that be Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, wherever your home is on social media, I'm sure you have noticed an uptick in these violent responses from this incel community. And it all started to really like ramp up and gain a lot of traction immediately after Trump won the election. And we're still in it right now. And I'm going to talk about why that is. And the first thing that I would like to share with you guys is Mars moving into Leo. Okay, so I have a chart here for Mars ingressing into the sign of Leo on November 3rd. So, November 3rd, Mars moved from Cancer into Leo. Now, Mars has not gone retrograde yet, but it's on its way to being retrograde in about less than a month here. Okay, so we're just a couple weeks shy of Mars stationing retrograde. We also, on November 3rd, had Pluto in the last degree of Capricorn, Mars at the 0 degree of Leo. Even though it's out of sign, it's in opposition, okay? And Pluto's going to be moving into Aquarius on November 19th for good. So once that happens, once we have Mars in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius, and we have Mars stationing retrograde opposite Pluto and Aquarius, we are going to be having an even it's going to be even more and more with these retrogrades, because it's usually Mars eventually within a week or so would move off of Pluto and be done with Pluto, and we would just have like a short Mars Pluto opposition. But that is not what we're having here. We're having an elongated issue with Mars opposing Pluto retrograde for a while. So this is kind of an energy of dig in and get comfortable. And the problem with this Mars Pluto opposition is, if you've been on social media and you've seen the reaction to um, a convicted felon and a person who's been convicted of assaulting a woman, multiple women. Um, if you see the reaction on social media, how these incels and these men have been emboldened to attack other women. Now, what I'm saying is not news by any means, because Newsweek, ABC News, NBC News, they've all picked up this story of how these men are um, threatening women online, and not just online, but in high schools, in colleges, out in public. The things that they're saying to women and the things that they are insinuating to women are very vile and disgusting. And we can see this happening, not just in social media, but in real life, in real time. And one of their most favorite things to say to women is, your body, my choice. And Nick Fuentes, who is kind of right now at the head of all of this, is the one who made the tweet that said, your body, my choice forever. And that tweet got shared multiple times by thousands of people. And this chant, or this taunting, is being repeated to women by boys in high school, or repeating this to women. Women on college campuses are hearing this. Women in public, women on social media are hearing this. Your body, my choice, da da da. All these types of things. There's been death threats against women. There's been basically statements telling women to get back in the kitchen and make them a sandwich. These men have called for the repeal of the 19th Amendment, which is the amendment that allows women to vote. So there is a lot going on here, and this incel pride, or this incel movement, and them being very proud of themselves for the way that they're treating women in this very derogatory way, has reached an all-time fever pitch as a result of the Donald Trump election. So we've got a situation going on here with this Mars-Pluto opposition, and I'm going to break it down for us in greater detail. But it essentially involves us having to look at how extremist ideologies, and when we think of extremist ideologies, we can start thinking about Pluto and Aquarius, okay? Because Aquarius is a fixed air sign. And a lot of people associate Aquarius being oriented with a futuristic mindset or a progressive mindset. But that isn't always the case. And there's plenty of, Aquarian communities and groups out there that are focused on fundamental, traditional, conservative, put women back in the kitchen, like that type of a mindset. And anything that Pluto touches is going to get very dark and extreme and shadowy. So when we're looking at Pluto and Aquarius, we can also think about extremist ideologies and the role that it's playing out, and how these extremist ideologies like incel culture contributes to the violence and aggression, Mars opposite Pluto, violence and aggression that we are seeing towards women right now. We also need to talk about the sign of Leo, because this Mars in Leo opposite Pluto and Aquarius is a big problem. And Leo energy is in a very rough position right now, because there's this energy of societal rejection, like these um, white male heterosexual guys who can't find a romantic partner and they blame women for this failure. These incels have been socially rejected. They're not popular, they're not special, nobody wants them. And so instead of saying, society has rejected me, I should maybe go to take a look in the mirror at myself and look at what I'm lacking and what my failure to bring whatever to the table. And instead of having that level of self examination, they've decided that they would like to. They think that nothing is wrong with them. Everything is wrong with the other person. So it's not you, it's me. I'm the special one. I deserve to be treated with a special entitlement that allows me to have whatever I want and allows me to be the king and rule over all of you and have you, submit to me, and I am dominant over you, and I am going to show you my dominance through threats or physical threats, right? Mars Pluto opposition. And we see that Mars in Leo energy coming out as a very dominating, I will shut you down with, my extremist ideological views, Pluto and Aquarius. And I have the support of this charismatic leader, okay, Mars and Leo, to further my dark agenda, Pluto and Aquarius, okay? So there's a lot of that going on with this Mars Pluto opposition, and it is very 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 dark energy. Now, it's nothing that we knew that this energy existed under the surface for a really really long time, but when you have a Mars in Leo, um Leo is spotlight energy. And what we have now is we have a leader, okay, Leo, Mars and Leo. We have a leader who has encouraged and motivated these shadowy dark groups to come out, um, and bring their violence and hatred towards the surface. And so this is what we see happening right now, is we see this Mars and Leo, this leader who is motivating extreme ideological viewpoints, Pluto and Aquarius, okay? And they're very fixed in it. It's not going to change. It is what it is, and this is what they believe. And there's no way to change their mind about anything, okay? And as we know in astrology, Mars has to do with war and anger and hunting things down and chasing things down, reproduction, reproducing, humping things, animals humping in the wild. This is all very Mars like energy, okay? Primal, raw, animals humping. This is very Martian type of energy. Mars just isn't about war and anger. It's also about, especially when you have Pluto in the mix, it can be about extreme sexualities, or extreme, like raw primal energy, that can become very destructive with the Pluto opposition. And it's long been my observation and my belief in seeing it in the charts of clients and other people and acquaintances and everything, that Mars Pluto oppositions, squares, and conjunctions sometimes are in the charts of um, predators who are demonstrating sadistic aggression and savage power to dominate, but it also can show up in the charts of people who have been the victims of extreme predators who demonstrate sadistic aggression and savage power and the will to dominate over others. And what we're seeing now is definitely an expression of that in the things that we're reading and in social media and in public spaces. And it is very triggering. And I probably should have given a trigger warning before I started this video. So consider this a trigger warning for those of you that have dealt with situations like that before, where you've been around extreme predators who take out their sadistic aggression and savage power to dominate on others. And that's very Mars Pluto. But when you put it in the sign of Leo and Aquarius, there's more to talk about here because, with Mars and Leo, we see a group of people who have had their pride wounded and injured because of societal rejection, Aquarius energy, okay? Because of societal rejection, they have had their will to dominate or um, their will to dominate over others. They've had that squashed because of the societal rejection that they have experienced, and now they feel stronger than ever, and to kind of let their anger come to the surface and to have that societal rejection Pluto wound exposed, because there is a charismatic leader, Leo, on the other end who is motivating them to form these dark communities, Pluto and Aquarius, and to basically create this very aggressive structure around it. Okay, Mars opposite Pluto. And so with Mars in Leo, now, for those of you who are familiar with Donald Trump's chart, you know that he's a Leo rising. He has Pluto at 10 degrees Leo. Okay, and this Mars in Leo is actually going to be making a conjunction with Donald Trump's Pluto in Leo as Mars goes retrograde. So I'm not just saying that he has motivated these dark communities to come out of the surface and harass women for my health. Okay, I'm not just saying that because I feel like being cute today. I'm saying it because when Mars ingressed into Leo on November 3rd, Mars was heading toward Donald Trump's Pluto in Leo. And what you see is an echo, right? And we see that in astrology sometimes. We see these echoes of things, right? Um, Pluto is going into Leo and it's going to be retrograde and it's going to be in a conjunction with Donald Trump's Pluto in Leo. So he has a Mars Pluto. He, by transit, is going to be having a Mars Pluto conjunction in his chart, as Mars is going to be transiting his natal Pluto as all of this is going on, right? So we see this echo of the Mars Pluto, of the Mars and Leo opposite Pluto and Aquarius. We see the mundane transit happening, echoing back to his natal chart. And to me, it just makes it all the more powerful. And it's more of a symbol to these people subconsciously to be openly flagrant and openly um, disgusting about the things that they are insinuating to women. Okay. So I think that that echo is very much there when you look at Donald Trump's chart and you realize this Mars in Leo is hitting his Pluto and Leo on his ascendant at this very same time that this Mars Pluto opposition is happening. And this rise of incel pride and incels being feeling like they have the power to go and dominate and destroy whatever they want is very much encouraged and emboldened by their leader, Donald Trump. And, Mars in Leo does talk about um, like the rise of a charismatic leader who encourages people through the use of aggression, Mars energy, to get what they want, okay, to get their selfish needs met, to get what they want, to go out and pounce on something, to go out and dominate something. And if something has wounded your pride or wounded you and given you an inferiority complex, go out and destroy that thing. And so that is what we are seeing with this Pluto energy. And now these incels, through the use of Donald Trump's election win, have a charismatic leader who fuels their machismo and sadism with violence and encourages his followers to be bold and upfront with their machismo, their sadism, and their violence. So we can see that that is really on parade right now. And what Mars in Leo says is it says, my sexual pride has been wounded is I have been rejected by women. Therefore, I will lash out in anger and violence due to the prejudice I have faced. Okay. And I will basically take revenge on you for wounding my pride. All right. And these are some of the worst qualities of Leo. Now, again, I'm not trying to pick on Leo energy because I know that there's a lot of great Leo people out there. But what I'm talking about is I'm talking about the darker side of Leo, which Pluto and Aquarius is definitely bringing to the table. Okay. And the darker side of Leo has to do with egotistical energy, self entitled energy, arrogant pompousness, self-aggrandizing, wounded pride, punishment, and revenge. Okay, selfish behavior, in which these incels are using their rationale, this rationale of wounded pride, for their violence against women. And their rallying cry is, I need attention, right? Leo energy. I need attention. I need to be popular and I need to dominate. And if I can't win at life or in the game of getting women, I will destroy everything. Okay. If I can't win, I will destroy everything. Mars in Leo, opposite Pluto in Aquarius. And one quality of Leo energy that is not great is when Leos are criticized, their ego really does take a hit, and there's a lot of anger when they are criticized, and they're not known for handling criticism all that well. And so, what we see now is we see like a payback for wounding the fragile ego of the situation going on here. Okay, for the fragile for the fragile ego of the incels and like wounding their ego, this is the penalty, that type of energy with Pluto and Aquarius. And what we see is we see a flagrant flaunting of their pride in winning. And as they have won, they have become more bold and more extreme about pushing their extremist ideological viewpoints. Okay, Pluto and Aquarius. And, this Mars Pluto opposition is really an energy of anger and payback for the wounding of the pride and ego. So I think we are clear on that. And that has come through very, very clearly on in social media, in real life, on the streets, where people meet in schools, etc. It has become very, very clear what their agenda is and why their feelings are hurt, and the fact that they feel they can take this out on the people that quote unquote wronged them. Okay. And I also think it's interesting because there has been some response to this. And what you see is you see the person who originally wrote that, your body, my choice comment forever, like his address was doxed online. And there's some reports that fires were started at his house and different things like that. So what you see is you see like a not only a ramping up of incels being very prideful in their ability to dominate and get revenge, you also see that there are um, this kind of response back on the other side as well. And there's been like a lot of posts on social media where conservatives and whoever are whining because those on the left are not willing to be friends or make nice. Um, and nothing says I don't want to be your friend and I don't care and we'll never get along again, like Pluto and Aquarius opposite a Mars and Leo. Okay, it's like I don't want anything to do with you, you're not my friend. So there's been some interesting responses on both sides, but definitely like the more punitive and um, violent response has come from these incels who have been saying really horrible things. And in some cases, it's men who are like, older, 30s, 40s, and 50s, talking to young women who are 19, 20, and telling young women, it's just a really, um, it's a really disgusting energy. And for anybody out there who's experienced this online and had these kind of comments thrown at you, my heart goes out to you because it has been horrible. And like I mentioned with Pluto and Aquarius, a lot of people have focused on the advances in technology that Pluto and Aquarius is going to bring. But I actually think there's another side as well um, to Pluto and Aquarius where there's like very um, splintered but shadowy and dark communities who've been strengthened and motivated by a charismatic leader who is an aggressive criminal who pushes them and their shady community out into the world at large. And I do think extremist ideological viewpoints could definitely be a part of Pluto and Aquarius. And we all saw, like, during his last presidency, we saw, like, the KKK becoming more flagrant. We saw, dark web, places like 4chan, and incels having these environments where their dark communities can thrive online. And, unfortunately, I feel like this Mars opposition is just giving them more power and more reason to kind of, um, to kind of spread their violence and aggression to others. And it is, it's tough. And I feel like a lot of these incels have been thriving with their anonymity with Neptune and Pisces and Saturn and Pisces. Like a lot of them have been anonymous and still been able to kind of work on their dark agenda while keeping the rest of their life separate. One good thing about this transit is that it is making them feel more comfortable to speak out and use their real names and become more like out in the open, right? Mars and Leo, more spotlight, more out in the open, using their real names. And hopefully next year, as we see Neptune moving into Aries and Saturn moving into Aries, that protection of anonymity to kind of remain in the background, but still spew their poisonous, extremist ideological viewpoints is going to be less. And hopefully, a lot of them do end up getting exposed, like full names and everything. So we do have that to hope for. Now, I will say, with Mars and Leo, the cult of personality is really strong. And I think a lot of us are, there's an old song called Cult of Personality. It's the cult of personality. Okay. If you're an older millennial or Gen Xer, you remember that song from back in the day. And that's what we have with the Mars and Leo is we have like a cult of personality, where the message is idealize our charismatic leader, admire, love, and respect, and idealize our charismatic leader, or else. Okay. And it's that vaguely threatening or else in the background, that is really snapping people awake. Hopefully. Okay. Hopefully, people are becoming more awake, but that cult of personality. And I do think with Pluto and Aquarius, I do think cults are going to be a major thing about Pluto and Aquarius because we've got that fixed ideological extremist viewpoints. And then we have like anytime you have this ideological viewpoint and you have a charismatic leader who has power, okay, Mars, Pluto conjunction, charismatic leader who has power in Leo, you're going to find these dark, shadowy communities who are worshiping in a cult of personality who carry the idea with them that you must admire, love, and respect this leader and do anything they want and never disagree with them, and you will love him or else. Okay. And it's that or else at the end that becomes threatening and very problematic. Um, Pluto and Aquarius could also be ruthless or destructive communities. Join our community or else, okay? Especially when we start talking about the side of Aquarius that can be very fundy or fundamentalist or reserved and traditional, as Aquarius is actually ruled by Saturn. And, we see in Leo, we see this symbolism of the hero who wins by taking it and forcing their way in, and you will submit to this groupthink or else. Okay. And so we've got some of that energy going on with this idea of Mars and Leo and being the hero by taking what you want by force and dominating others through your violent, aggressive acts. Okay. So this is energy that we all need to be careful of, and that we all need to be aware of, that this energy is operating right now. And astrology is playing out in front of our very own eyes right now, literally right now. And I think that that is very interesting. The bottom line is that we have a destructive, violent cult taking over in this country, and the message has been get in line or else. And we're living in disturbing times where there are extreme groups that are coming to the surface and spouting and touting their manipulation and exalting the leaders that they follow. And it's tough energy with that Mars Pluto opposition. It definitely is. And Pluto and Capricorn exposed capitalism for the greedy, unruly pig that it was. And really, Pluto and Capricorn really explored the greed and corporate monopolies that are inherent in our structures. And we moved away from Pluto, or we're moving away from Pluto and Capricorn. All of us are far more aware of that than maybe we ever were in the past before. But I wonder what Pluto and Aquarius is going to show us. Is it going to show us and expose these fundamentalist shadow groups through a process of violence and exploitation of marginalized groups? Is that what it's going to show us? Because I'm not looking forward to that, and I wasn't looking forward to Pluto and Capricorn either. Honestly, I'm not trying to be a total downer here, but I'm like, what is there to look forward to with this energy? It's so bad. And I'm going to try to, um, in my year of 2025 ahead, I'm going to try to be a bit more positive and focus more on the individual and less on what is happening in the mundane. But the astrology is interesting right now intellectually, even if it is horrible, because it is playing out and we do see it for what it is, and we can identify what's going on here. And one thing that I would say is, now that the gloves are off and the hostilities are out in the open, right? Mars Pluto opposition. The gloves are off and the hostilities are out in the open, my friends. They are out. All right. What's going to happen next? And I think none of us really know the answer to that fully. We don't know, but we do know that the gloves are off and the hostilities have been brought to the surface, um, which Mars Pluto oppositions are very good at doing. And how that plays out in our individual lives is going to be interesting to see. We know, for instance, I want to switch gears a little bit right now from the Mars Pluto opposition, as fun as it's been, as wonderfully uplifting as it's been. I'm just kidding, everybody. I'm being sarcastic there. And I want to talk a little bit about the nodes, the South Node and the North Node. Okay. The South Node is in Libra and has been since, I think it was, when was it? March of 2023. I forget when the South and North Node went into Aries and Libra. It was sometime in 2023. And actually, I think it was maybe summer of 2023, June, I want to say. And we are almost to the end of the South Node in Libra and Mars in Aries. At the beginning of next year, we'll be transiting into the South Node in Virgo and the North Node in Pisces, because the nodes move backward. But what I think is really interesting about the North Node and the South Node, and what got me thinking about all of it in general, was like the nodes kind of exacerbating like the battle of the sexes, and how violent and destructive men have become towards women, and how women are really not wanting anything to do with men. And there's a lot of women who've made the decision to stop dating men. And perhaps some of you have heard of the 4B movement, and which gained a lot of traction in South Korea and has now kind of made its way over to the United States. And, thinking about the North Node being in Aries, which is Mars energy, right? And the South Node being in Libra, which is Venus energy, and Mars Venus, right? And you think about the battle of the sexes, or you think about Mars opposite Venus, or you think about like what is happening with the North and South Node right now, and they pack a mean punch. The North and South Node are considered like shadow grahas in Indian astrology, and they're considered shadowy planets, and they're actually given the status of planets, even though they represent a point basically of intersection, the nodes are highly important in astrology, the moon's nodes, and where they are in the sky is very important too. And, um, it's been really intense with these eclipses in Libra and Aries. And what we see with the South Node in Libra is we see women rejecting relationships. And Libra is the sign of relationships. And Libra is associated with Venus, which is associated with women. And wherever we find the South Node, we find an energy of emptying out, purging, rejecting, and K2 or the South Node can become very, very fierce with its rejection. I do not want this. Do not give this to me. Get this away from me. Okay. And what we see is we see a lot of women who don't care about dating or marriage or having children anymore and who just want to be left alone. And I think that that is very South Node in Libra for where the social the social environment is right now. And as I mentioned, a lot of women who have decided they do not want anything more to do with dating apps. They want nothing more to do with going on dates. They're done and they want nothing to do with it anymore. And they're picking up and following what was called this 4B movement in South Korea, um, which originally started as kind of a protest to the way that the women of South Korea were being treated by the men. And they said, we're no longer dating you. We will not have sex with you. We will not marry you. We will not have your children, and we will not date you. And, it's hard to say numbers wise how this has affected the dating pool, but we do know that a lot of people have moved off of the dating apps and are no longer doing dating apps anymore. And we saw a horrible campaign by Bumble. I think it was April of this year, right when those eclipses were, right when the Aries eclipse was going down. We saw those horrible ads coming out from Bumble about celibacy, like, targeting women and saying, celibacy isn't the answer, and all this kind of gross shit, basically. And, women reacted very negatively to those Bumble ads and they were forced to take them down, but it didn't help. Many people just deactivated their Bumble accounts and said, nope, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm not going to ever go on this dating app ever again. And online, we've seen like a lot of women posting their messages that they get on Bumble from guys that are really disgusting and bad, or people posting online the text messages that they get from people. See, everything's moved to this online structure, and people are moving to this exposing energy for sure. And you can see, I really feel the South Node in Libra is like saying, we're done as women. We are done compromising. We are done placating. We are done showing up for this dog and pony show. Like, we are done. Bye. And there are quite a few women who have decided to walk away from that. And wherever you align with that, I support you. I know I do a lot of love readings on this channel, but my goal whenever I'm doing those readings is to get you to the highest truth for yourself. And certainly, I don't want to be a person that adds to the problem when it comes to love and romance and giving people like fake readings that make them feel better, but ultimately offer no truth and no ability to kind of change the direction you're going in your life, right? So I just want to acknowledge that too, because I know I do a lot of, love and romance readings on my channel, but I'm always trying to get to the higher truth. And for those of you that do want to continue dating, my pledge is to support you in that and to help you make healthy decisions along the way. But if you don't want to be involved in the dating machine and all of that, I completely understand given where things are at this time. I completely get it. And I support the people that are taking steps to remove themselves from the dating, quote unquote, dating culture as well. And the energy with this South Node in Libra, a lot of women are decentering men and decentering relationships and focusing on themselves. North Node in Aries, okay? And they're focusing on having an independent life that is free from the pressures of having a relationship. And people are getting their tubes tied, birth rates are declining. We just see with this South Node in Libra this rejection of relationships. And with the South Node in Libra, women are sick of compromising on their values and they'd rather avoid it altogether. We see a rejection of partnership, the lack of wanting to relate, um, and a lack of diplomacy, I feel like, between men and women as well, and shutting down that sense of compromising or diplomacy. South Node in Libra. We also see like a lot of rejection of beauty standards, people shaving their heads and, not wanting anybody to look at them or admire them for their beauty, which is that South Node in Libra. And there is this like big social media trend around being quote unquote no man's piece and refusing to be any man's piece. That has been like a big thing. Like, I will not be any man's piece in the world. And so we can see that going on. We see this lack of diplomacy, lack of agreement between men and women, and a letting go of relationships to balance areas of a person's life, other areas of a person's life. And so I think that is really interesting energy with the 4B movement in the South Node in Libra. And I think it definitely relates to that. And I would definitely draw that conclusion. Um, I also think Saturn in Pisces is kind of giving that air of um, there's no hope left and all there's left is despair. So why care? Type of energy as well with Saturn in Pisces. And I wanted to take a minute here to show you guys the chart of the original OG incel named Elliot Rodger. Okay. Now, Elliot Rodger, let me show you guys a picture of him. Here he is right here. Elliot Rodger was a incel, okay, an original incel, and people kind of quote him as being an OG, the original gangster of incels, okay. And on May 23rd, 2014, Elliot Rodger gunned down several people. He tried to actually get into a sorority house to get more women, but he was only able to get a few women outside of the sorority house. But the reason for his massacre was he was a misogynist who identified as an incel, and his nickname was the Virgin Killer. And he published a 140-page manifesto complaining about not being popular and not being able to get a girlfriend or have a sexual relationship with a woman. And he in his 140-page manifesto, he talks about basically it's a complete complaining and whine fest about why he is not the king of everything and everyone, and his whining about social rejection and not being able to get a woman to like him basically fills the pages. And there's a lot of entitlement in it. He talks about being depressed. He talks about how being socially rejected and being depressed and all of that. But there's a lot of grandiose thinking in his manifesto about how wonderful he is and how there's something wrong with women because they don't love him and they should basically be bowing down to him. Now, what I have on the screen here is I have a picture of Elliot Rodger and I have a picture of his natal chart as well. Now, if you look at his picture, you can tell that there is within his expression, there is like a subtle undertone of smugness and a subtle undertone of um, superiority that is covering up that insecurity. But you can tell by the way that he's pursing his lips and the fact that there's no emotion in his eyes whatsoever tells you that there is something very wrong with this young man. But he also has an insane amount of planets in Leo in his chart. Now, I wasn't shocked when I saw that. I really wasn't. Um, the guy was a Leo rising with his ascendant at 29 degrees Leo. Now, keep in mind, guys, this is the guy that was trying to gun down a bunch of women outside of a sorority house because they wouldn't sleep with him and he couldn't get a girlfriend. And he was in a depressed, self pitying state and believed that he was superior and that he should be treated like a king and treated like a god because he's so wonderful and what's wrong with all these women. Now, Elliot Rodger eventually, went on this rampage and then took his own life. But like I said, he published that 140-page manifesto, and other incels have looked at him as like the leader of the incels, and they've taken his manifesto as like a guide for being an incel. And yeah, so this guy was 22 years old when he committed this atrocity. But right away, you can tell like he has a stellium in Leo. So again, that energy, and of course, he has Chiron in a conjunction with his sun in Leo. And his sun is opposite Saturn in Aquarius, okay? He has a tight opposition between his sun in Leo opposite Saturn in Aquarius, right? And his whole thing of I'm perfect, I'm wonderful, I'm amazing, I'm the best, and the rest of you are shit for rejecting me is very much that energy of the sun in Leo opposite Saturn in his seventh house, okay? You guys are the one, there's something wrong with you guys because I'm the best, all right? And that sense of having a wounded pride or a wounded ego, Sun Chiron conjunction in Leo. I have wounded pride and a wounded ego because no one is paying attention to me. And his whole manifesto is about how he isn't popular and how he's trying to be popular and how no one likes him. Okay. So it's very Leo. Like his whole manifesto is very much written in this I deserve all the attention, I deserve to be popular. But there is this societal rejection, Saturn and Aquarius, okay, where he can't be the king of everything and he's not the most popular guy and girls don't really like him, okay? And what's interesting, what shocked me when I looked at his chart is I was like, okay, we have again a Leo Aquarius problem, don't we? We have a Leo Aquarius dichotomy. We have societal rejection due to not being special. And yet, I am so special and I deserve everyone to love me. Okay. Me, my pain. And my biggest goal in life is to be popular and special. And because I'm not, there's a festering wound within me that I cannot let go of. Okay. And when I looked at his chart, I was like, okay, this to me just reeks of a person who like begged their higher power to be born but never should have been born, because it's like you can't handle your own individuality in this world against a society that doesn't love everything about you every 5 minutes. Okay. So it's an interesting chart, and it is chock full of Leo energy and Aquarius energy. And he just happens to be the quote unquote leader of the incels in their mind. I also think it's kind of interesting that they called him the Virgin Killer, and he has Mars in Virgo. And we know, Virgo is associated with the Virgin. And, his nickname was like the Virgin Killer, Mars in Virgo. So I think that because he was a virgin when he died. And I think another interesting thing I'd like to point out about him is his ascendant at 29 degrees Leo. And as we know, 29 degrees Leo is a very special degree, and it has to do with, royalty, and it has to do with fame, and it also can have to do with superiority complexes or inferiority complexes. And it is where the fixed star Regulus is located. And what's even more kind of weird to me and interesting to me is that I pulled up Donald Trump's chart, and I looked at, and I was like, doesn't Donald Trump have his ascendant at 29 degrees Leo? And I was like, oh my gosh, he does. I mean, who can forget that Leo ascendant that he has? And here's Donald Trump's chart on here as well. Here's his ascendant at 29 degrees Leo. Here's Elliot Rogers' ascendant at 29 degrees Leo. And I'm just like, okay. And, we have Mars in Leo, conjunction Elliot Rogers, Mercury in Leo. I think Elliot Rodger, had he lived long enough to see Trump become president, would have loved President Trump, and loved everything that he stood for, everything that Trump stood for, right? So I think it's interesting that they literally have the same degree of ascendant, and they both have inspired incels all over the world with their actions and how they are, right? And I think there's something very interesting about that that Leo, 29th degree Leo. And I'm going to show you guys one other, one other thing that I would like to show you as well. So that's kind of funny to me about Donald Trump's ascendant aligning with his ascendant. And I bet Elliot Rodger would have really loved him as a president and voted for him and supported him. One of the last things that I would like to share with you guys is I would like to share with you the astrology of Lorena Bobbitt. Now, unfortunately, Lorena Bobbitt, it's really hard to find a correct birth date for her. And this is Lorena Bobbitt. And here is this chart. Next to it is the chart of an event where she cut off the quote unquote appendage or manhood of her husband. Now, everybody pretty much knows who Lorena Bobbitt is. And my goodness, you guys, I really wanted to roll out a 5-hour lecture on the astrology of Lorena Bobbitt. Believe me, if I could, I would. But some people say her birthday is October 31st, 1970. I also found May 15th, 1969. So I don't know what her real birth date is, and I don't I don't have a birth time for her. So the best I can do is pull the chart for the event when she cut off her husband's dangalang after years of physical and verbal and mental abuse from her husband. Now, if you were alive in the 1990s, I mean, even if you weren't alive in the 1990s, I'm sure you know who Lorena Bobbitt is because she's like well known in culture. And, you know, people saying they're going to pull a Lorena Bobbitt or they're going to take matters into their own hands, like against their abuser, like Lorena Bobbitt did. And anyway, I found out that the night that she cut off her husband's appendage was on June 23rd, 1993. In the early hours of the morning, she cut off her husband's manhood after years of psychological, mental, emotional, and physical abuse by her husband. And so I wanted to show you guys a picture of Lorena Bobbitt, and I wanted to show you the event chart of when Lorena Bobbitt cut off her husband's you know what. And wouldn't you know it, guys? Wouldn't you know it? Look at the Mars in Leo at the 29th degree, okay? So I called this chart Lorena Bobbitt Cuts It Off, okay? June 23rd, 1993, in the wee hours of the morning, okay? She cut it off. Now, at the moment that she was doing that to her husband, Mars was at the 29th degree of Leo. So we found it in Elliot Rogers' chart, we found it in Trump's chart, and now we're finding it in the chart of this event, which I think is interesting because not only was Mars at the 29th degree of Leo, Mars was also squaring Pluto in Scorpio. Now, remember earlier when I was talking to you guys about Mars Pluto aspects, and I was saying Mars opposition, Mars opposite Pluto, Mars square Pluto, Mars conjunction Pluto. And I was telling you that Mars Pluto aspects often have to do with sexual aggression, either a victim, you know, acting against their perpetrator or the perpetrator acting against their victim. And what we see in this chart, the night of the attack when Lorena Bobbitt did her deed, was that Mars was at 29 degrees Leo, squaring Pluto. Okay. So we can see a victim taking revenge on her perpetrator. And not only do we have Mars at 29 degrees Leo, squaring Pluto in Scorpio, but we have we have Chiron in a conjunction with Mars that night too, which definitely talks about wounded manhood or wounded sexuality, right? And then we've got the square to Pluto again, where we see the victim finally fighting back and taking action against the perpetrator here. And I think it's a really, also Venus is opposing Pluto in this chart too. So, and Saturn is literally in Pisces at this time too in 1993. So it's an interesting chart for the night of the attack when Lorena Bobbitt finally, you know, got revenge or got even on her husband and did what she did. Now, I think personally it is interesting that Elliot Rodger has his Mars at 29 or has his ascendant at 29 Leo. Trump has his ascendant at 29 Leo, and Mars is at 29 Leo in this particular chart right here. There is something weird about that 29th degree in Leo. There is something very, very weird about it. And I don't even know if I have the right words to describe that degree and what it means and the intensity and the we know that, like I said earlier, Regulus is located at 29 degrees Leo, and it can indicate royalty and fame. And of course, Elliot Rodger became famous for what he did. Trump is famous. Lorena Bobbitt is famous for this act that she did. Um, but it can also indicate like superiority complex, or like we saw with Elliot Rodger with that cold dead look in his eye and that smug look on his face, um happening at that same time too. So it's really, we know that Leo has a need to feel admired and lavished for attention and be the number one and be the king. And there is a lot of, arrogance inherent in that when Leo energy is acting in a very out of pocket kind of way. And I think we can all hope that for people who are very like arrogant and superiority complex and all of that, they're literally 1 degree before falling into Virgo energy. They're like on the doorstep of falling into Virgo. And me personally, I hope in the next lifetime that people like Donald Trump or Elliot Rodger, that in their next lifetime, they are born not as some, like king of things or highly regarded person by their followers, but are born as, basically like janitors who are sweeping the hallways. Now, nothing wrong with janitors sweeping the hallways. Kurt Cobain was a janitor and worked as a janitor for a while, but Kurt Cobain also didn't have a God complex or a superiority complex, and he wasn't a raging, fame hungry narcissist either. And you can tell he's a Virgo rising. And I'm not saying all Leos are, but I'm just saying, guys, like, let's think about it for a second. And I truly hope that some of these people that are like famous and widely held up to these, grand standards by their followers, that in their next lifetime, there is no fame for them, there is no glory for them, there is no anything for them. They can be born as, like somebody who is washing floors, washing toilets, and they can learn the value of like putting their ego aside, and they can learn the value of being a humble servant in the world instead of, arrogant pricks. So, anyway, everybody, I am going to go ahead and end the recording there, my friends. Do let me know how you felt about the recording. I wish you all the very best. Take care.